Make sure you guys stick around for the full video. This video right here, we're going to be asking the question about race relations in the United States, if it's actually deteriorating, especially between white people and black people. I'm pretty sure a lot of us already know the answer to that. However, I do think a much broader explanation needs to be given. I'm going to explain to you guys why it is that I still feel that it is mostly regional. It is also pumped up mostly by the media. There is some actual stats and some data to kind of back this up. And of course, we're going to be revisiting the guy with the glasses. So make sure you guys stick around for the entire video, and we're going to go ahead and get into it right now.
Is how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem. Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm saying to you that we need to solve this problem, because they are going to kill us. And I will leave on that. So we have to just set up our own system and stop playing and get very serious and not be diverse.
Here we are again, revisiting Scott Adams. Well, guys, you saw that clip and you probably thought to yourself, wow, how in the world can you not be convinced of what's going on? Well, I'm not saying that I'm not convinced. Yes, I do believe that there is an agenda going on here. However, we have to ask the question first, exactly how bad things have deteriorated, especially between white people and black people. Now, guys, I have said on several occasions, I still very much hold very dear to this. I'm going to be pulling up a few how do I say? I'm going to be pulling up a few sets of demographics here. Now, I live in a state that is 22% black. I've been around people of color my entire life. By the way, I want to go ahead and say this now. When you address most black people, it is best to simply address them as black. They prefer to be called black American, okay, not African American. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, my God, do you sound like a freaking liberal? No, dude, I'm just simply a person who has grown up around blacks my entire life. So, obviously, I would have some interpersonal experience here. Make sure you guys stick around for the full video, because of course I do believe that the vast majority of this stuff is mostly pumped up by our mainstream media. Our media is designed to put us all against one another. However, we're going to be talking about agenda and stuff like that in a much broader project at a later date. This right here is just to simply ask the question, well, why the hell are things deteriorating so bad? So before we go any further, let's go ahead and kind of break down how this video is going to go. Obviously, I'm going to make my case. We're going to bring Scott Adams back up here soon. But, of course, we're going to be showing you guys this video that came out that's been going viral, of course, of this subway incident involving a white family and, of course, one particular individual, black gentleman. And, of course, it's gone viral, and people are kind of beginning to say, you see, this right here is more and more proof of what's going on. Me personally, however, I still believe that what is going on is mostly regional, as in mostly in blue cities and blue states. And I believe I'll be able to give a much broader interpretation of why that is in this video. So make sure you guys stick around. We're also going to be looking at something that was said today on Louder with Crowder, and of course we'll be looking at some of the data that he brought up, or some of the data that he wanted to mention, to kind of reassert what's actually going on here. Obviously, there's going to be some contrast in this video to some other takes, so make sure you guys stick around for the entire video. And with that right there being said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and roll the video that went viral. Of course, I had to edit it somewhat because of the language. And right after that, we're going to also see a bit of what was initially said by Scott Adams to kind of contrast the two. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Gay ass here, Caribbean, African shit, shit's annoying. Fucking gay ass gorilla looking. Shut up, your ugly body. Nasty ass, mutating, permutating, corrugating, etiolating, skin. Shut up, your body don't even last long enough. I'm gonna look younger than him by the time he's my age. I don't care about them ugly ass kids in your race. Shut up. Fucking plastic ass body. Little debilitated, enervated, emasculated, feeble, incapacitated, indisposed, emaciating, attenuating, tenuous body. I don't care about you. Shut up, you white monkey. You a dog in this country. You're a fucking dog. You're nothing over here. You are a dog. Shut up. I'm
Nearly
black.
half of all blacks are not okay with white people, according to this poll. Not according to me. According to this poll. That's a hate group. That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with them. And I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the fuck away. Wherever you have to go, just get away. Because there's no fixing this. This can't be fixed. All right, this can't be fixed. You just have to escape. So that's what I did. I went to a neighborhood where have a very low black population.
Well, you probably saw the first clip and then you saw Scott Adams's, and you probably said to yourself, wow, I guess Scott is correct. No, that is not the case. Scott lives in a city. Scott has moved from a city. Now, guys, I'm showing you guys some photos right now of the Boston busing riots, and one of the more famous pictures is of the white guy with the long hair with an American flag trying to stab it into an individual of color. I am also showing you guys some photos of riots from Detroit, Chicago. I'm showing you guys some riots of Newark and, of course, Baltimore. I'm also showing you guys some riots of BLM. The reason why I'm showing you guys these photos and doing this in voiceover is to try to paint a picture for you that it is not exactly what you think it is. The vast majority of these cities, if you recall the demographics of each city that I was putting up, you will notice that most of these cities are actually mostly white. So right then and there, especially when you contrast it to cities in the South, especially small towns, you kind of sort of see that it is, for the most part, a regional ordeal. Now, we could talk about INFACT. We could talk about all the other groups out there, right-wing groups and left-wing groups. We could talk about BLM. We could talk about Antifa. And, of course, these type of groups will be coming up more and more in this video. But it seems to me that our media is taking very, very small incidents or incidents that have gone viral that someone else has recorded, and they're plastering them all over the place. Of course, you guys saw the guy on C-SPAN basically say, we got to find a way to kill whites. Of course, you see a guy who is berating two white people who, quite frankly, were minding their own business on the subway station. That, by the way, was a subway, and last I checked, most cities in the South, especially big cities, don't have subway systems. Most of them do not. That does not mean they don't have a metro system going in the city like a Washington, D.C. or Baltimore does. But the thing is this right here. By the way, it was already revealed that this was in New York City. So as I have said on several occasions, I do believe this right is mostly regional, meaning that it is in the cities. If you look at your big cities in American history, you will notice an actual history of riots, race riots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You even had some in San Francisco. I just figured I would throw that out there. And don't even get me started on what's going on out there. The whole Stop Asian Hate thing did, of course, happen for a reason. Now, guys, you're probably thinking to yourself, and I know I've already asserted this on multiple occasions, is there a race agenda? Yes, there is definitely a race agenda. However, let me go ahead and say this first, and then I'm going to say this after we roll the next set of clips, which, by the way, came from Stephen Crowder. He had Alex Jones on. So let me go ahead and say this now. There is one thing that I really and truly disagree with Alex Jones on. He is saying in this next clip that what they're trying to do is they're trying to look at the fact that the country's going to be majority non-white. I have already shown you guys on several occasions, two projects in particular, that more than likely that is not the case. If anything, it looks to me like white people are not the ones being replaced. It looks to me like black people are the ones being replaced. Of course, I've got to use the BRT acronym rather than the WRT acronym. But don't worry, I will be leaving both videos in the description box, and I'll try to put them in end cards for this video. I haven't tried that yet. I think I might do it for this video here. One of the main reasons why I want you guys to stick around for the full end of the video is because of those two videos. We're going to try to get that done this time and actually get done right. The thing is this right here. I took a look at the black birth rate. I took a look at the black death rate. I also took a look at the fact that elderly blacks were outliving much younger blacks. Obviously, the age is obviously a lot different, but when you actually look at the demographic, you see that elderly blacks are still hanging on very, very tight, but younger blacks are dying at an extremely ridiculous rate. Now, guys, when would you want to actually have children? You would want to have them when they're young. You definitely want to have your kids before the age of 35. Even though men can continue to have children and help the kids in their 60s, most women don't want to have children beyond the age of 35. It's very, very rare for women to have kids at the age of 40. And I also took a very, very good look at the black abortion rate. It is astonishing considering the fact that you had a minority that was roughly 13% of the nation's population, and now it's argued in some statistics to be lower than 11, and in some cases it's right around 12.4. Either way, African Americans are being replaced. They're being replaced by Hispanics coming across the border. Somebody's going to say that there sounds very, very xenophobic, but all you got to do is take a look at what's going on at our border and the amount of people who have been let in, and you, quite frankly, would see that obviously I am definitely onto something. Now, guys, with that right there being said, I'm going to roll this first clip. We're going to come back, then we're going to roll the second clip, and then we're going to get behind the computer, and we're going to look at the Gallup study that Crowder mentioned in this video.
Lady. Yeah. That same black lady was still on her phone, bumped a white woman who was wearing a little, one of those little, kind of patchouli looking, looks like she would wear patchouli, but a beanie. And she went, and spoke to her husband like, I guess because I need to check my privilege. Guess what? We can't have a society that has one group of people believing that other people are weak and easily intimidated. Therefore, you should do it to right the wrongs of the past. And let me give you some more examples here. The media's role in it. I don't know if you remember when Elon Musk, by the way, actually African-American, made news with this tweet where he said that the media is racist. For a very long time, U.S. media was racist against non-white people. Now they're racist against whites and Asians. Same thing has happened with elite colleges and high schools in America. Maybe they can try not being racist. Let's compare how the very same media covered the tweet. Everything he just said there, by the way, is factually verifiable. Asians at elite colleges, high schools in America. That is a fact. There are lawsuits that are being won. The media covered African-American Elon Musk's tweet with this. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, Tesla, and Twitter, accused the media and elite colleges and high schools of being, quote, racist against white and Asian people, espousing his views without providing evidence on Sunday. Where could he have possibly pulled that stat, assholes? And by the way, I don't know if you saw this. Remember the Rasmussen poll? They asked people, black people, if it's okay to be white. Only 53% of blacks agreed. 47% of black Americans, people of color, weren't sure. That is incredibly disconcerting. That means that there's a 50-50 shot when you're walking down the streets right now. If you see a black American, there's a 50-50 shot that they don't know if they think you have the right to exist.
And that's what's got the corporate media and the universities and everything on record to divide the country and, to basically bring the country down, know that the country's going to be a majority non-white. And so whether they're Latin American or whether they're people that are already here, that are black, that are Americans, the universities, the culture is teaching them, you've been screwed over, you've been wrong by this group of people.
Yeah.
And so literally it's the most racist thing on earth. The opposite of what Martin Luther King said that was totally true. Judge people by what they do, what they create, what they stand for. And that's what we should be doing. But instead, no one is calling out the white leftists that are teaching this, the Hollywood, the media that promotes it, and then you're going to have a large minority of black people, a minority of that minority who are going to buy into this because they see it in the media. They believe it's normal. Now, when I see this Rasmussen poll, I don't believe that actual number. That's how they pitch it. That's how they skew it. But what it is white people will tell you, they've done polls, is it okay to be white? And they say, no, you can't wear that shirt. In fact, I've seen similar numbers where the majority or close to it of white people won't say that. Or if you try to sell that shirt on a lot of shopping cart platforms, they'll take your thing away.
Wait, which shirt? A white shirt?
No, it's okay to be white.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is I think
like
that's black people
guy
with the political correctness. Some of them are racist. Some of them have drunk the Kool-Aid and been brainwashed. But most of them are just like the white people bowing down to Black Lives Matter. They believe it's the right thing to say. Well, maybe it isn't good to be white.
It's a bully pulpit and people are intimidated. And let me give you some stats here just so you know how it has flipped, like Alex is talking about.
Yeah.
And they've been successful with a lot of this. So in 2012, most people viewed race relations in America as positive.
I do agree with Stephen when it's mostly white people pushing it, but I also do believe with Alex when it comes to the topic of it's our media that's kind of fomenting it. However, I do want to go ahead and say this right now. That Rasmussen poll that Scott Adams referenced. Now, there was another person, another commentator, Jimmy Dore. By the way, let me go ahead and say this about Jimmy. There are a lot of people out there who believe that Jimmy Dore is like an honest leftist. No. He's not. When you actually go back and you look further in his past, you see that character assassination was something that he was very, very much involved in. Now, he may be a little bit more honest when it comes to reporting, and I do not actually sanitize myself with just good old-fashioned conservative content. I do watch some people from the left. Jimmy is just probably one of the ones that I could probably stand the most. However, when you try to compare the left-wing commentators on YouTube, obviously the gold standard of their networks is going to be TYT, which is really just the National Enquirer, and they're not even really good at it. It's mostly comedy, in my opinion, but they say a lot of crazy stuff. As a matter of fact, I would actually argue that TYT and a lot of your leftist commentators have helped make this issue 10 times worse by sensationalizing it. Obviously, people are out here looking for clicks, and as you probably have noticed, people are going to try to they're going to try to sensationalize this crap. It's almost as if to say if you sensationalize something, your channel will then be successful. I refuse to do that, okay? If I have ever done that in the past, just call me out on it. Go right ahead and put it in there, and I'll acknowledge it, and I just won't do it again. The thing is this right here. In Jimmy Dore's take on it, he basically said that he felt that a lot of people were calling in and they were joking about saying, no, hell no. It's not okay to be white. While I do not doubt that Jimmy is lying on that. I also don't think that Jimmy is being 100% truthful or is even correct on that. If anything, it's probably a very, very small percentage of people that are actually calling in and saying it's not okay to be white. And for all you know, it's white people themselves saying it as a bit of a gag. So I would argue that maybe the poll is off, but not by an astronomical amount of what Jimmy Dore says. What he was saying was practically cope. Let's go ahead and get to the rest of this.
Americans aren't buying the bullshit from the media as much as white Americans are, 72 down to 45. That's the problem. And so white Americans become passive and they become intimidated. And you know what the worst thing is if you actually want to interact on a day-to-day basis with black Americans and be able to have a friendly relation, is to not be intimidated, passive. You know what black men don't respect? Pussies. That's the truth. Culturally,
well, I don't think anybody likes that. I mean, look, that's what's happening. The left
but
literally
really
wants everybody.
They don't even like eating it.
Look, it's very simple. George Soros, I agree. George Soros and the globalists have put billions of dollars into Black Lives Matter to take over any type of black movements, to simply put a black face on the globalist agenda and then tell everybody else, bow down to our agenda or you're racist. And it's not even a black agenda, but there are black people that are buying into the fact that whites are inherently bad and getting in their face. And when people do that, people need to get back in their face and let them know that's not okay.
Well, here's something, too, that when I was raised, I was raised in Canada, which is a silly place. But it was basically a post-racial America, Canada. Canada's like America Light, right? But then I noticed later on you would have kids trying to identify with the American ghetto. Like, for example, Drake is a buttersoft bitch from a nice, wealthy area of Toronto. He played the Jewish kid on Degrassi who couldn't outrun the school shooter, and he had to wheel around like Stephen Hawking without the mouthpiece, and now he's talking like he's from Memphis. So there's a lot of there's this desire to be a part of a culture that, by the way, isn't necessarily indicative of actual black American culture. Oh, you're a white guy talking about this. Well, you know what? Don't take my word for it. Again, all references available at louderwithcrowder.com. Hey, when we were young, and even before that, you had the Jeffersons that went on for a very long time, right? But the Cosby Show, before he raped, like 95 people allegedly.
But we just didn't know.
The process had started, but we didn't know.
Right. Yeah.
Peak viewership, and I had to double check this, was at 62 million per episode. It was the number one show in America for 5 seasons. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reached a peak viewership of 20 million per episode. It turned Will Smith into a movie star, right? Empire, though, now we fractured where everything.
Now, as far as weakness is concerned, let me go ahead and say something to you right quick. I know people have social anxiety. They have disorders where I wouldn't call it disorders, but they have periods where they can't just, they have natural fear. They don't understand certain things. Look, like I said before, a lot of this is regional, okay? Most suburban white kids, guess what? They haven't been around people of color. Most black people don't live in suburbs, so definitely most white kids are probably going to have an issue with it. I had the same issue with Carlin Borisenko's CRT take. I felt that a lot of her take was coming from a place of ignorance because she had not actually had any personal relationship with people of color. I mean, that's just kind of sort of who she is. She lives in New Hampshire. She's only about 1 or 2% black people that live there. Same thing with people who may live like in a state like, say, Wyoming, where you've only got about 1% black people there. However, if you live somewhere like, say, Los Angeles, California, guess what? You're going to be around people of color because people of color exist in that city. New York, the same exact thing. You go to Boston, you see that a lot of these areas, of course, which do have a little bit higher, they're somewhat segregated. You have a black side of town, you have a white side of town. Where I grew up at, small town North Carolina, you did have, it was a little bit more separated. However, you did have blacks who actually were living in white areas and white neighborhoods, and you went to school with black people constantly because in most small towns, you don't have that many actual schools. So therefore, there's a greater chance of white kids interacting with black kids. We used to even have jokes about it, which, by the way, I can't tell on YouTube because YouTube would say that right there is being racist, when in reality, even a lot of black people where I live would actually laugh at it because they would kind of sort of say, yeah, that's actually kind of true. The thing is this right here. One of the main problems that we have is we have this issue with socialization. People aren't socializing with one another, and if they actually socialize with one another, we probably wouldn't have this issue. Yes, I'm sounding a little bit more like bring everyone together here, but the thing is this right here. A lot of this right here is the mainstream media. Now, where Crowder was saying he felt that a lot of black people were rejecting a lot of the nonsense, that right there I do believe. Because if you look at the actual map of America and you look at the actual demographic map, you will find out that more than half of black people don't live in these major large cities. Also, something else too, let me go ahead and say this right before we get to the Gallup data. I know it's taking me a while to get there, but let me go ahead and say this really quick because this is very important. We need to go ahead and establish the differences between rural, urban, and suburban. When you see the U.S. Census say that roughly 70-some-odd% of the American people live in urban areas, that's a little bit misleading. Okay, let me explain what I mean. I would say to you right now that America is mostly small towns. Well, guess what small towns are considered to be? Urban. They lump us in with big city populations. Let me give you an example of what I mean. We'll use the city of Dallas, Texas. Okay? You have Dallas, you have Fort Worth. Well, outside of that, you have a small town, very, very small town called Keller. You have other towns like in Denton, you have Arlington. They're much, much smaller towns. They are considered to be urban, even though they are much, much smaller towns. Where I live at here in my home state of North Carolina, same thing. Small town compared to, say, somewhere like, say, Raleigh or Charlotte. Those are actual big cities. The fact of the matter is that when you see that urban statistic, most of that urban statistic is small towns. If you actually tally up everybody who lives in the metro areas of like New York, Boston, all the major cities in the United States, you'll find out that it's only about maybe 33% of the actual population itself. The suburban side of the population is also a lot smaller than people think. This is one of the reasons why I keep telling the Republican Party, stop aiming for suburban voters, because suburban voters are in fact gone. With that right there being said, let's go ahead and look at this data and we'll come back on.
And guys, here is that article that Crowder was referencing. Now, really quick, in the description box, there will be the article from Pew Research, which was from 2019. That one I think is a little bit more in depth, but still though, we're going to go with this one right here. But don't worry, that particular research study will be in the description box. I already read it. It's not that different from this one here. Also, something else too. There will be a Newsweek article to go along with this that also documented this, and I'll try to find whatever updated information that there is to also place in the description box as well. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the data. Gallup, U.S. perceptions of white and black relations sink to a new low by Lydia Saad. I'm guessing it's pronounced Saad. So the story highlights fewer than half rate relations between white and black Americans as good. Current 44% is the lowest in a 20-year trend. Both racial groups still hopeful problems will eventually be resolved. Americans already, now guys, I'm not going to read the entire article, but I'm definitely going to be reading the initial summary right here, and then we're going to go down to the charts itself. Americans already tepid view of racial relations between white and black Americans has soared since 2018 and is now the most negative of any year in Gallup's trend since 2001. The majority of U.S. adults say relations between white and black Americans are very or somewhat bad. As 24% are very, somewhat's 31%, while less than half call them very, 7%, or somewhat good, or 37% somewhat good. Now guys, really quick, I made two separate videos on BRT. Of course, I'm using the acronym. The reason why is because, unlike Alex Jones is going to tell you in the very, very next clip, I don't think it's white people who are being replaced. I actually think it's black people who are being replaced by Hispanics, especially those coming across the border. We'll talk more about that in the next section. But I just want you guys to keep that in mind. In those projects, I detailed how it was that the black birth rate was extremely low, whereas the black population, the older population, very, very older population, the population that can't really have children at the rate that you might want, it is actually relatively high within its own race. However, the younger population is dying out. So those of childbearing years are not going to reproduce like you might want them to do. Also, something else too is the only minority that actually shrunk over the last decade. The U.S. Census keeps a record on this every 10 years. And at the end of 2020, we got some extremely shocking data. Now, with that right there being said, and don't worry, we'll come back to that topic here in a second. Let's take a look at this. Relations between white and black Americans from 2001 to 2020. Now, let's take a look at this. Green, of course, is very to somewhat good, and of course, dark green is very to somewhat bad. Now, you guys are seeing me scroll my mouse along. 2002, I'm going to get right here to I'm going to get right to 2008 really quick. Especially when Bush left office. As you can see, the number is slightly above 28. Of course, that there is for somewhat or very bad. However, you also see that right here, I'm going to say correlating about as close as I can be, it's right around 68, 69%. Very to somewhat good. Obama had just got elected. We just had our first black president. Now, of course, things, did not really and truly change. You guys are seeing through both graphs. They didn't really go up or down until roughly right around here. Now, I am guessing this right here is right after 2013. Obama's second term started. As you can see, the number, somewhat bad to very bad, spikes to 30. However, somewhat good to very good stays at right around 70. Okay, let's see exactly where things went down. As you guys can see, very to somewhat good, shot down right here, right before 2016 started, or going into 2016. Well, something happened that year. You guys remember what it was? It was BLM, the BLM protest. I remember 2015. It started with Ferguson. You had Freddie Gray, you had all those incidents. Next thing you know, you have BLM coming out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say really quick, as I detailed in the very, very beginning of the video, that I believe a lot of this is regional. What I mean by regional is big cities. St. Louis, Missouri has got a relatively high crime rate. Ferguson, of course, was a suburb of St. Louis. New York City has got a very high crime rate. If you guys look at the racial demographics, which I'm going to put up here right here, for some of these cities, I'm putting up Boston, I'm putting up St. Louis, I'm putting up Philadelphia. You will notice that a lot of these cities are much, much whiter. Now, Boston, if you go back in their history and actually look at the riots that they had, the busing riots, and you look at the Newark race riots, you'll see a very, very key correlation there. You'll notice that racism, or at least racial incidents, are a little bit more rampant up north of the Mason-Dixon line. Well, why might you think that? Well, the reason why is because even though the South did have a history of Jim Crow, it also had a history of whites and blacks, especially poor whites and blacks, working together. If you go talk to your basic U.S. history professor that you would find in a college or a university, they would tell you that. Even the most liberal of ones would tell you that this was the case. Roughly after the Civil War, after all the Inquisitions, after all the Jim Crow originally started, what they did was the older whites, they put whites and blacks against one another. After a while, poor whites and poor blacks began to get along for the most part, but those for the most part lived in cities, tried to keep up appearances. Now, yes, racism did in fact still exist. Jim Crow was obviously very bad. However, the thing is this right here. A lot of that racism shifted up north. Even Martin Luther King himself said he felt that the racism in Chicago was way worse than he saw in Alabama. Just figure I'd throw that out there. But looking at the data itself, now let's see something right quick. Some varied to somewhat good shot back up to 53 right after 2016. As you guys can see, the varied to somewhat bad stayed pretty, actually lower down a little bit. However, as you guys can see right here, right around 2019, it began to shoot right back up to 55, and of course it began to decline. Now, why in the world would it decline? Well, you had Antifa, you had a lot of far-left groups. You did have some groups on the right pop up, but of course, when anybody talks about white supremacy on the right, and they mention the Proud Boys, I have to remind them all the time that Enrique Tarrio is an Afro-Cuban. Also, Donald Trump also doubled his black vote in 2020. Makes you wonder if what Crowder was saying earlier is not how do I say, not inaccurate. You see, guys, I live in a southern state. I live in an area that is not entirely white, and I've already shown you guys the demographics in my home state, 22% black. I've been around black people my entire life. I've never had this problem, not one bit. Sure, there are some incidents. Sure, there are some things said, but people tend to get over this stuff a lot easier. Like I said before, we live together, we work together a lot more often, rather than being in segregated and separated communities. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this really quick. Most Americans are upbeat about white-black relations from 2001 through 2013, with the percentage calling them good to any degree, ranging from 63 to 72%. The sharp decline in the sharp decline in positive perceptions to 47% in 2015 followed numerous high-profile incidents in the prior year of unarmed black citizens being killed by white officers. That right there is a little bit misleading, because we would later on find out in the Michael Brown case that what happened was that he tried to grab Officer Darren Wilson's gun. Most police departments have a part of their department procedures, their department guidelines, actual rules and regulations, and also in most states, if you try to grab a police officer's gun, that is basically deadly force right off the bat. I mean, because God knows what the hell that person might do if they get a hold of that weapon. That person is an imminent threat. Also, something else too. Now, I've got my problems with PragerU, but Larry Elder explained it perfectly. I will try to leave that video in the comment section of the description box, either one. Okay. After improving slightly in 2016 and 2018, ratings of race relations have fallen to a new low in a Gallup telephone poll conducted from June 8th to July 24th, 2020. The nationally representative survey of 1,226 U.S. adults includes an oversample of black Americans weighted to their correct portion of the population. The latest poll was taken at the start after the start of the widespread protests on racial justice sparked by the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis in May. But before the recent shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, any political conflict in Portland, Oregon that have led to deaths of among protesters and counter-protesters. Now, I may have botched the reading at the very end, but the thing is this right here. Race relations in some areas have gotten a lot worse. mostly in very big cities. All right, it's mostly in very, very, very large cities. Now, as far as an agenda is concerned, as far as a race agenda is concerned, as I said before, we all know that there is one going on. As I mentioned before, in Liberalism Find a Cure, and in several books that Mark Dice said, you can go online and see it for yourself. It's pretty obvious that there is an agenda going on here. I mean, I've talked about it before, just about everybody has. However, I'm going to save that for a much, much larger project at a later date. Fact of the matter is that the media is fueling this. Now, let me go ahead and give you guys an example of what I mean. I mentioned this earlier. Number one, I do not fully agree with what Scott Adams said. I still to this day contend that Scott Adams said what he said to actually troll people. He was already leaving anyways. He was leaving his workplace. So therefore, what did he do? He decided to troll people. I mean, dude, the guy's already gotten millions and millions and millions of dollars, so wouldn't this probably be the right time for him to leave? He did go on with Hotep Jesus shortly afterwards to have a conversation about this, and it was actually a very productive conversation. Like I said, and I'll try to leave that one in the description box as well. Race relations have gotten worse, in my personal opinion, in certain areas, as in certain areas of the country. And guess what? It isn't down south where they love to point all of us single white conservatives, all of us Christian conservatives. No, it is not us. It is going on for the most part up north. Now, guys, I will be leaving the rest of this article in. I'll be leaving this article in the description box. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at one more thing too. Okay, this right here is something else. Let me go ahead and pull this back up. Ratings at low EBB among both racial groups. Through most of Gallup's trend, white Americans have been more likely than black Americans to rate white-black relationships positively. But until 2015, large majorities of both groups through the thought relations were generally poor. Since then, positive ratings from white and black Americans have been more subdued. Positive ratings of white-black relations have deteriorated slightly more than the past 18 months among white Americans, down 8 percentage points to 46%. Then black Americans down 4% to 36%. The figure among white Americans roughly matches the prior low of 45% recorded in 2015, while black American perceptions are the lowest yet. Let's take a look at this really quick. Positive ratings of white and black relations. Okay, non-Hispanic white adults, of course, is light green. Dark green is black adults. And as you can see, Scott Adams was actually correct. 2010 right here, you see it at roughly 60%. It raises to 66%. I'm on the dark green, which is black adults. As you can see, it was at 66% right around 2013-2014 time frame. And then roughly somewhere in 2015, it dropped to 45%. No, excuse me, 51%, my bad. And then out of the middle of nowhere, as you guys can see, there is a massive drop-off through 2018 all the way to 2020. Fact of the matter is that the decline started under Obama right towards the end of his administration. It did get worse under Trump, I'm not going to lie. However, you also got to remember what the media was like when Donald Trump was in office. As a matter of fact, it's still like this today. I mean, hell, they're trying to lock this guy up over something that happened in 2016, yet the New York State statute of limitations ran out on that in 2021. I mean, it's amazing the amount of power the mainstream media has. All right, I just figured I would go ahead and throw that out there. By the way, this right here was a poll that Scott Adams was originally referencing. Other group relations rated more positive. The survey asked Americans to rate relations between other racial and ethnic groups. Of the 5 different pairings explored, white-black relations are viewed as the most troubled this year. The 44% of Americans perceiving relations between white and black Americans to be very or somewhat good contrasts with 78% for white-Asian relations and 68% for black-Asian relations. Do I need to show you what the hell is going on in San Francisco? 66% for black-Hispanic relations, 62% for white-Hispanic relations. White-black relations are not the only pairing to show a decline in 2020 compared with the average from 2015 to 2018. Similar drops are seen in positive ratings for white-Asian relations, down 7 points, and white-Hispanic relations, down 4 points. At the same time, there are no meaningful changes in ratings or of black, Asian, or Hispanic relations. Let's see what we got here. Americans' perceptions that relations between each racial ethnic pair are somewhat good. From 2001 to 2013, whites and Asians, it was 81%. Oh, crap. 2015 to 2018, now it's 85%. 2020, it was 78%. So only a decline of about 7%. Okay, that's still a pretty big decline, though. Let's see. Black and Asians, of course. No data between 2001 and 2013. 66% and then 68%. Like I said before, it looks bad in Los Angeles and it looks bad in San Francisco, but it does not look as bad in other areas. As I have said before, most of this racism is regional. What happens is that the mainstream media likes to take a certain issue and then highlight it like what you saw in the subway. That event occurred in New York. Black and Hispanics, 54%. That was 2001, 2013. From 2015 to 2018, it had actually improved and has improved even a little bit more to this day. Whites and Hispanics, as you guys can see, has actually declined a little bit. I wonder why. You have a border crisis. That's obviously going to have a bit of an effect. And as you guys can see, the big one is what? 68% between 2001 and 2013. Of course, it's 50% between 2015 and 2018. And of course, 44%. As I have said before, the entire ordeal got worse under Barack Hussein Obama. And then after Trump got elected, there was a bit of a lull. And then, of course, when 2019 came around, it's election season. So what do? You pump up the racial rhetoric, and our media continued to pump it up, and people fell for it hook, line, and sinker. However, I will agree with what Crowder and Alex Jones said earlier, which I did show you those clips earlier. I will agree with them. Most of this racism, for the most part, is in fact driven amongst white people. All you have to do is go to a college campus. All you have to do is go to a university, and you will see it firsthand. All the BLM shirts and stuff are being worn mostly by white people, not black people. I'm just figuring I'd just go ahead and throw that out there. Now, guys, with that right there being said, I'm going to leave this article in the description box to go along with the Pew Research article.
So
and
yes,
let's go ahead and get
with
the
all
rest
the
of this video.
statistics that you have seen, all the information that I've given you, which, by the way, will be available in the description box of this video here, I want to say this right here. The thing you have to understand about this entire mess is that a lot of this, of course, is done by your media. I'm rolling you guys the whole thing from the, I guess it's the YouTube channel, The Cut, where they basically asked if white people were good at anything. Well, let me go ahead and be the first person to admit that black people typically tend to be better athletes. They typically tend to be in better physical shape. However, blood pressure is much, much higher, and health defects are also much, much higher. It's actually a very, very big concern, especially given the fact that it's such a small portion of the country. And I've also stated in my BRT and BRT2 that it was actually black people who were being replaced. A lot of black people can't really and truly see that. I hope and pray that they wake up and actually see what the hell is going on. However, I also hope and pray that black people will also see that most of this stuff is in the sea. This is not most black people. No, it is not. It is a very, very small portion in separate pools. That is what this right here is. Okay, so yes, the racism does exist. However, if you go, you got to ask yourself a question. How much of it is actually interpersonal, and how much of this is actually being fomented by our media? I would argue with you right now that pretty much all the racism in this country is being fomented by the media. As far as it being a part of agenda, well, I think we all know the answer to that, but we will be covering the agenda itself at a later topic at a much, much later date. Now, guys, with that right there being said, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up in the comment section. If you disagree or you think I got something wrong or whatever, please leave it in the comment section. I would really and truly love to hear what you guys have got to say, and I'll see you guys later.